Professional learning communities and their effect on student achievement. A research proposal done by Elizabeth Lester for EDUF 7116, Columbus State University. The purpose of this study is to find a correlation between the active use of professional learning communities by teachers and staff and student achievement scores. I want to prove that there is a relationship between the two. My hypothesis is that I believe that student achievement scores will improve when a strong professional learning community is in place. I will work to prove this with a mixed methods research design that incorporates both quantitative and qualitative data. As I look at the rationale for my study, I quote Hamilton from 2009, saying that as educators face increasing pressure from federal, state, and local accountability policies to improve student achievement, the use of data has become more central to how many educators evaluate their practices and monitor students' academic progress. With the ever-increasing pressures put on systems, schools, and teachers, we need to have a better understanding of what produces results when focusing on best practices in the classroom. I'll be working with a developmental mixed research design as I'm looking to improve upon schools that do not use a PLC with the results I expect from those that do. Some definitions that are important in my study include professional learning communities. By DeFore, an ongoing process which educators work collaboratively in recurring cycles of collective inquiry. What is collaboration? It's to work jointly with others or together, especially in an intellectual endeavor. And what are we looking to assess? Student learning, defined as learning outcomes or statements that describe significant and essential learning that learners have achieved and can reliably demonstrate at the end of a course or program. During my literature review, two statements jumped out at me as being important. One by Carolyn Doer in 2010. Learning is no longer preparation for the job, it is the job. In a world in which information expands exponentially, today's students are active participants in an ever-expanding network of learning environments. It is our job as teaching professionals to ensure that those learning environments are what they need to be for students to comprehend and to walk away having learned what we wanted them to learn. That means that we need to work well with other professionals, not be afraid to get ideas from others, and improve the practices that we're doing in our classroom based on the assistance that we get from everyone in our school that's involved in the total education of each child. Also, McClure stated in 2008 that to date, most existing research is in the form of surveys and case studies which do not provide evidence of cause and effect relationships. I hope that the study that I have planned will correct that, and that through a mixed methods design, being able to collect quantitative as well as qualitative data, that I will be able to come up with the relationship between professional learning communities and student learning. My methodology includes a non-random sampling, as I'm using 4 already existing schools. The participants will be from 2 elementary and 2 middle schools. Location, Muskogee County School District in Columbus, Georgia. Method, mixed method using quantitative and qualitative methods combined. My independent variable is the professional learning community, which I hope to prove has a direct cause or effect on the dependent variable, student achievement. I plan to do this from August the 10th, 2015 through the end of that current school year, May the 20th, 2016. The research questions that I will be asking throughout my study are: 1. Which features of a professional learning community lead to changes in teacher practices? Do teachers change their practices when collaborating with other professionals? 2. What effect does the leadership and school climate have on the success of a professional learning community in schools? Decisions such as scheduled planning time or block scheduling, for instance. 3. Do the features of the professional learning community vary based on personnel? Does teaching experience and personality impact the use of professional learning communities? And 4, does actively participating in professional learning communities in a school help student achievement to increase? Do state assessment scores increase in schools that have active collaboration practices amongst teachers? My data collection will be in many forms. I will look at state assessment scores from the Georgia Milestones Test. I will also look at classroom formative test scores and the assessments that are done in the classroom. I will do extended field work and put in as much time as possible in each of the schools. I will conduct interviews of the administration and the teachers. I will do observations in classrooms and data meetings and grade level meetings. I will look at participant feedback as well as questionnaires that will be given to the faculties at each school. I will also include questionnaires from students who are involved in the learning at each school. When looking at the data analysis that will need to be done following my study, I must first quantize my qualitative data and put it into measurable form or in quantitative format. The internal validity will be difficult to prove because I'm not going to be able to know what happened prior to my study as far as where the test scores came that is my baseline, because I'm going to be using test scores from the previous school year, and I don't really know what went on in the classrooms or in the schools prior to the beginning of my study, because I will be using the test scores again from the prior school year before, kind of as a baseline as to where I'm going with my professional learning community study. If I can prove internal validity and make a strong relationship between professional learning communities and student achievement, I feel very confident about my external validity and the fact that I will be able to generalize it to other populations, not just in Muskogee County, but outside of Muskogee County and even outside of the state of Georgia. I have to be concerned with the differential selection as a threat to my internal validity, because there's going to be so many differences amongst the students and amongst the teachers and amongst the climates of the schools that I will be looking at, that I've got to be very careful in controlling or watching my internal validity. And differential selection is one of the problems that will threaten that and that I will need to be aware of at all times. In conclusion, when looking at my study, I know that it will be difficult to prove internal validity with the threats that lie ahead, but I feel that very confident that as I work through my study that I will be able to do that, and therefore am prepared for the threats that arise. My results would be reliable, as I feel certain that anyone could come along and do my study and follow through with the directions and the plan that I have laid out. It would provide evidence of a causal description, meaning that my study will be able to describe that by incorporating professional learning communities as the independent variable and manipulating that part of the school, that I will in fact have a relationship, a positive relationship in the dependent variable of student achievement. I will have strong external validity as well, as I will be able to take the results of my study and generalize them across populations, not just in Columbus, but outside of Columbus and even outside of the state of Georgia as well. Statistical conclusion validity. I will be able to prove my study valid because with the two variables that I am testing and that I am looking at will show a strength of the relationship and the fact that that relationship is in fact dependent on each other, and that will give me the opportunity to again prove a positive relationship between professional learning communities and student achievement. And finally, I will have to stay at all times aware of researcher bias. I know what I want to find. I know what I want to happen through this study. So I've got to be aware of that bias and make sure that when I'm collecting my data, both qualitative and quantitative data, that I am not in any way skewed towards what I'm trying to find. So I need to be aware of my bias at all times in order for this study to be successful.